All right, so I just want to finish up real quick here with Chomsky talking about our election. So let's just get this out of the way real fast.
Of democracy are undermined. Now, of course, all that is technically legal, but that tells you something about the way the society functions. So
the money, the concentrated capital inside of our elections, and he goes, well, of course it's all legal, but that tells you a lot about, here we go.
If you're concerned with our elections and how they operate and how they relate to what would happen in a democratic society, taking a look at Russian hacking is absolutely the wrong place to look. Well, you see occasionally some attention to these matters in the media, but very minor as compared with the extremely marginal question of Russian hacking.
So there you go. He's talking about you never see the stuff that actually affects our elections talked about in the news media, and the stuff that doesn't, the Russian hacking, is way overblown. Now I want to show you something from Amanda Turkle. So here is,
who's she?
No, she's a blogger she might even be their chief Washington correspondent for Huffington Post. So she's been around, I've known her she's very well known, she's very well respected, Amanda Turkle, and she's a good writer and journalist. And she was at a she says, well, here it is, I'll read it to you. She says, I'm at a conference for international journalists. Deep skepticism amongst the Russian journos, independent, liberal, not state media. So she's talking to independent and liberal journalists from around the world and in Russia that say Russia forces significantly influence. So they're skeptical of the claim that Russian forces significantly influenced the US election. A lot of disillusion about how the US media have covered the issue too. Really interesting. And by really interesting, I guess you mean, wow, we've gotten it completely backwards. I'm caught up in a big mass hysteria propaganda push. And why is this happening? If that's what you mean by really interesting, if by really interesting why this isn't going to be covered by the United States press, then yes, that's also really interesting. And I checked, she didn't even write an article about it. I went to maybe she did, I have bad research skills, but I tried to find the article she wrote about this, right? This great revelation that she had at this international journalist conference, and I couldn't find it. So I would, if she wrote it, please someone send me the link. I'd love to look at that article, but no one talked about that. No one talked about her findings and no one's talking about anything except the party line propaganda. Russia hacked our election. And let's remember how Russia hacked our election. They hacked our election and rigged it by letting us know that the Democratic Party rigged our election. That's what they did. What did the emails tell us? The emails told us that Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC were 100% corrupt and rigging our election. So if Russia rigged our election by letting us know that the DNC was rigging our election, I say thank you. Anybody should help us know that we're being cheated. And by the way, it wasn't Russia, because Bill Binney on this very show, I showed you who was the #1 code breaker at the NSA. They made a documentary about him. That's how smart he is, called The Good American. He proved forensically that it could not have been a hack. It had to be a leak. So everything they're saying is garbage. And the FBI never ever had access to the DNC servers. That's another story. But what's more interesting here is how the US media is ignoring the rest of the world media and how they view this. You just heard what Chomsky said, that it's a joke to the rest of the world. Amanda Turkle goes somewhere where the rest of the world is. She finds out that's exactly correct, and she makes a tweet about it, and no one talks about it. That's it. She's not some nobody. She's a very respected journalist. Nobody talks about it, never heard again. And I just want to show you this. They put this together from so I hope I has sufficiently made the case so far that this Russiagate is nothing but propaganda. Chomsky says so. Amanda Turkle just found out when she left the country that it's. And we've showed you there's absolutely no evidence. Kyle Kulinski debunked the Manchurian candidate and if you really care about foreign meddling in our elections and control of our government, you would care about Israel and Saudi Arabia. None of those things ever get talked about. So now here's the result. Here's Rachel Maddow. You want to see how bad it's gotten? Someone put this together from just one episode of her show from last March, and I'm going to play it for you. Here we go.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia.
She was talking over Chomsky. She had Chomsky on. She was talking over him just to say Russia over him. That's outrageous. He's a well-respected person.
Here we go.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia, hate Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow, Russia, pro-Russian, the Russians, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russian against us. Russians rush against the U.S. The Russians, Russian government scheme. The Russians, Vladimir Putin, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia, the Russians, Putin, Russia, the Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, communism, Russia, assault by Russia,
Putin despises the West in general and the United States in particular, the Soviet Empire. Russia. They're the adversary. They want to bring us down, the Soviet Union.
Okay, that's all for that show. That was from one show. So, and I just want to let you know, all that propaganda being pushed by the mainstream news and the establishment press and Rachel Maddow specifically, you know what the result of that is? If you go to my computer, the Gallup just did a poll. Less than 1% of Americans believe Russia is a top problem. Less than 1% of Americans. So when I say this on the show that no one in America cares about this, I'm not making it up. I actually travel to parts of the country, and I know that no one cares about this stuff, right? So this is a completely made up propaganda, and I'll just show you a little bit from this Gallup poll. It says less than 1% of Americans consider the situation with Russia a top problem for the United States, according to a Gallup poll released on July 18th. The number of Americans who consider Russia to be the biggest problem facing the country has not surpassed 1% in any of the past 7 months, the pollster found. While major news outlets have relentlessly pushed the Russian interference narrative for nearly 2 years, Americans remain overwhelmingly more concerned about domestic issues, with concerns about immigration and the government topping the list of the biggest problems. The lack of proof and the negligible concern from Americans on Russia issue may be contributing to, get this, to President Donald Trump's resilience in presidential approval polls. In 2018, Trump's approval rating has tracked closely to that of President Obama's during his first term, according to Rasmussen Reports, the pollster that was most accurate in predicting the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. The survey conducted last week as Trump concluded an international trip by meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Helsinki showed those controversies haven't yet harmed his overall popularity. The 45% who approved of his job performance compared with 52% who disapproved represent a slight uptick since June. That brings Trump's popularity more in line with those of his Oval Office predecessors after he recorded historic lows for a new president in 2017. One major asset for Trump, by 50% to 34%, voters approve his handling of the strong economy. So what I'm gonna tell you is what Rachel Maddow is doing is actually hurting our country. She's actually doing what she's saying Putin and Russia is doing to our country. Rachel Maddow is hurting our country and hurting our chances to replace Donald Trump with a social democratic leader. That's what she's doing. She's actually helping Trump. That's what the polls show. That's what the data shows. And even her own viewers aren't buying that Russia is a problem. They're watching that like porn. Like people used to watch Sean Hannity when he would talk about long form birth certificates. That's how people watch Rachel Maddow. And that's how crazy it's gotten. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this clip. There's a whole hour and a half of aggressive progressives waiting for you at the Young Turks Network. Become a member and get access to all the content.